The airport buzzed with its usual chaos, rolling suitcases clattering over tiles, intercom announcements echoing through the terminals, children weaving between legs, exhausted travelers adjusting boarding passes with tired fingers. Amid the swirl of noise and motion, Maya Thompson stepped through the automatic doors, a soft breeze brushing over her as she walked into the bright fluorescent light. She looked effortlessly composed, her curls neatly pinned back, a long beige trench coat resting over a fitted black dress, and a leather carry-on slung over her shoulder. Her skin glowed with the sheen of someone who had found peace after years of storms. She moved with quiet confidence, unaware of the eyes slowly turning toward her. But one pair of eyes froze completely. Michael Hale, billionaire hotel tycoon, 6'3", sharp-jawed, impeccably groomed, stood near Terminal C with his assistant. He was arguing over an email, waving a tablet in frustration, until he looked up and saw her. Maya, his ex-wife. The woman he had discarded like an old contract 5 years earlier. The woman he once loved in private but never quite acknowledged in public. The woman he left behind as soon as his empire grew and his circle of wealthy friends whispered judgment. He hadn't seen her since the divorce. He never expected to. For a moment he stood still, stunned at how she had changed, or perhaps how she had finally become someone he couldn't diminish. The anger bubbled up instantly, not because of her presence, but because of what seeing her stirred inside him. Memories of mistakes, regrets he never admitted, and the guilt he buried so deeply he pretended it didn't exist. His assistant, Trevor, followed his gaze. Do you know her?" Michael clenched his jaw. "No," he snapped. "Just someone I used to deal with." Trevor nodded, though it was clear he didn't believe him. Maya didn't notice them at first. She stepped toward the check-in counter, adjusting her airline documents, gently brushing the sleeve of her coat. She looked peaceful, independent, untouched by the man who now stared at her like a ghost from another life. But fate rarely lets such moments stay quiet. Michael walked toward her, each step echoing louder in his chest than on the tiles. His expression tightened, ego swelling with every stride. "Maya?" Her head turned slowly, and when she met his eyes, her expression shifted from surprise to something steadier, calm, controlled, self-protective. She hadn't forgotten the scars he left. She never would. "Michael," she said softly, "it's been a long time." He crossed his arms, looking her up and down. "So, you fly commercial now?" The words were sharp, intentional, a jab, a reminder of the life she once shared with him. Private jets, 5-star vacations, champagne lounges, and luxury she never asked for but was expected to maintain. Maya inhaled slowly, refusing to react. "I'm flying where I need to go." Trevor stepped closer, curious. Michael ignored him, stepping into Maya's space with a confidence that bordered on intimidation. "What brings you here? Shopping for a new life? Or another man to pay for one?" Maya didn't flinch, but the sting was real. Memories of the divorce flooded back. His accusations, the lawyers, the tears he hid at night, and the humiliation she endured when tabloids wrote headlines implying she was never good enough for him. But she wasn't the same woman anymore. "No," she said simply. "Just traveling." Michael smirked, a cruel glint in his eyes. "Traveling where? Last I heard you were living in some—" He paused, eyes narrowing as he searched his memory for the neighborhood he once mocked. "Small place downtown. Hard to keep up, isn't it? After losing someone like me." The voice wasn't loud, but it was venomous. The type of tone that aimed to shame. The type meant to remind her of the imbalance he believed still existed. And the type of tone strangers start turning their heads at, especially the ones who notice the racial undertones beneath it. Maya drew a quiet, steady breath. "I'm doing fine." Michael scoffed. "Please. I built your entire life,
Everything you wore, everything you had, it came from me. Now look at you." He gestured dismissively at her modest luggage. "Back to ordinary." Trevor's face twisted awkwardly. Even he could see the cruelty in Michael's tone. People nearby were beginning to stare. An elderly woman, a father with 2 kids, a young couple, and 2 flight attendants waiting for their gate assignment. Michael didn't care. His ego had taken control. "How do you even get here?" he asked mockingly. "Bus? Rideshare? Or did you beg someone for a lift?" Maya's shoulders tightened slightly, but she remained composed. "I drove myself." "Of course you did." He sneered. "Well, good luck, Maya. You always wanted to be independent. Now you finally get to see what that feels like. Without a man, without money, without me." The words sliced deeper than he knew, not because she wanted him back, but because of the arrogance with which he assumed she needed him at all. He leaned closer, voice low. "You don't belong in this world anymore." Maya finally met his eyes, not with anger, but with strength. "I don't belong in your world anymore." The moment hung between them like a wire pulled tight. Then an airport staff member approached Maya politely. "Ma'am, can you please step this way? Your transportation is arriving." Michael laughed under his breath. "Transportation? What, a shuttle?" But something shifted. The staff member's respectful tone, the strange hush spreading over the nearby crowd, the security guard stepping toward the glass wall overlooking the private runway. Michael frowned, confused. Then the ground vibrated. A shadow rolled across the windows. People turned. Phone cameras lifted instinctively. A roar of engines filled the terminal as a massive Gulfstream G700, sleek, polished silver, with a custom emblem painted along its tail, descended like a king returning to its throne. The jet taxied directly to the private gate, right to Maya. The staff member smiled warmly. "Your aircraft is ready, Miss Thompson. The captain is waiting for you." Gasps spread through the terminal. Someone whispered, "That's an $80 million jet." Michael's face dropped. Confusion twisted into disbelief, then into humiliation. What is this?" he stuttered. "Maya, what are you doing? Whose jet is that?" She lifted her bag and smiled softly, her voice steady. "Mine." The words hit the air like thunder. And Michael Hale, billionaire hotel mogul, stood frozen in the middle of the terminal, humiliated by the ex-wife he believed would never rise again.
The terminal lights felt harsher now, like every bulb above was deliberately exposing the tension in the air. Maya stood frozen for a moment, her boarding pass still in her hand, her pulse thundering in her ears. People around them pretended not to stare, but their sideways glances, their half-hidden smirks, their silent judgments dug into her like needles. Jordan's voice echoed again, mocking her, dripping with entitlement he wore like expensive cologne. "Come on, Maya, admit it. You didn't think your little commercial flight life could ever cross paths with me again." She took a slow breath, one for calm, one for dignity. "I didn't think you would still be this small," she said quietly, her voice steady but firm enough to slice. That sentence made him flinch, barely, but she noticed. The security agent nearby raised his brow, watching but not interfering. Jordan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen," he said, a false softness coating each word. "There's a charity event happening in New York. Old friends, real money, real status, people who actually matter. I have a jet taking me there. You won't get invited, obviously, but I thought I'd remind you who you lost." Maya felt the old burn of humiliation trying to claw its way up her throat. She remembered the early years, when he was charming, supportive, promising her the world, and how quickly that charm crumbled when he realized she wouldn't be someone he could display like an accessory.
The racism he hid at first started dripping through cracks in arguments. A comment here, a joke there, a patronizing remark about her trying to fit in at one of his events. It took her years to understand that wealth had never made him powerful. He was simply a man used to stepping on others and calling it ambition. She looked him directly in the eyes. "I didn't lose anything," she said. Jordan laughed loudly enough to draw more attention. "Right, keep telling yourself that, while you squeeze into economy-class seats." A mother walking past frowned disapprovingly at him. A man wearing a maintenance vest shook his head. Even in his arrogance, people saw exactly what he was. But Jordan didn't care. He leaned back, smirking proudly. "You know what? I'm actually doing you a favor. I'm showing you what real success looks like. Mine. You should thank me." Maya turned away, unwilling to give him another ounce of her dignity. But he stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the gate again. "I didn't dismiss you yet," he said. "You don't control me," she replied. Jordan's smile thinned. "Oh, Maya, you always said things like that, and yet here you are, alone, ordinary, and still pretending you're, what, important?" Her jaw tightened. A small tremor ran through her hands, not from fear, but from fury she refused to let erupt. She had built her entire life on not letting people like Jordan define her. But something in her chest ached with the old wound of being belittled by someone who once held pieces of her heart. "You don't know anything about my life now," she said. "I know enough," he shot back. "I know you're not on the list for any exclusive flights. I know you don't have a business worth mentioning. I know you can't afford the kind of lifestyle you used to pretend you deserved." She stared at him for a long moment, unable to decide whether he was being cruel on purpose or simply didn't realize how hateful he sounded. Maybe both. A security agent approached them cautiously. "Is everything okay here?" she asked. Maya opened her mouth, but Jordan cut in. "She's fine. She just doesn't understand airport procedures. Some people don't travel often." The agent's eyes darted to Maya with sympathy, then back at him with a subtle glare. "Ma'am?" she asked Maya directly. "I'm fine," Maya said, forcing a small smile. "Just dealing with an unexpected conversation." Jordan laughed again, dismissing her with a wave. "Anyway, I should get going. My pilot is waiting. Enjoy your, budget journey." Then he added one last blow, leaning close enough that his breath brushed her ear. "People like me are born for success. People like you are born to watch." He stepped back, expecting the words to crush her the way they once might have. But when Maya turned to look at him, her eyes were steady, sharper than he anticipated. "You don't get to define who I am anymore," she said softly. "You never did." Jordan scoffed and began to walk toward the private flight lounge, his expensive shoes tapping loudly on the polished floor. He didn't look back. Maya lowered herself onto a bench, her body shaking with a cocktail of anger and exhaustion. She had come so far from that marriage, farther than he could ever imagine, and yet in 3 minutes he had attempted to drag her back into the shadows he lived in. Her phone buzzed. A message from the unknown number she'd been given the night before. "Your pickup is confirmed, arriving exactly at 5:42 p.m. Please wait near private gate C." She stared at the screen. A breath hitched in her chest. 5:42. That was in 9 minutes. She exhaled slowly. No, she would not let Jordan's poison steal her calm, not today. Not after everything she had worked for. The airport around her buzzed with life, families dragging suitcases, students rushing for flights, businessmen talking loudly into phones, yet her mind felt strangely still, serene, except for the faint tremor beneath her ribs. When she finally stood and headed toward private gate C, her steps felt purposeful, steady, almost cinematic in the way the crowd seemed to part naturally around her. The farther she walked from the main terminal, the quieter the hall became. The floor seemed to soften under her heels. The lights dimmed slightly. The noise faded until only distant echoes remained. But something unexpected happened as she reached the end of the corridor. Jordan reappeared. He had turned around. He spotted her walking toward the private gates and froze mid-step, confusion spreading across his face. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him, didn't slow down, but he blinked, stared harder, then started following him, almost involuntarily. When she reached the frosted glass doors marked "Private Access Only," a uniformed officer stepped aside respectfully. "Miss Carter, right this way. Your jet will arrive in a moment." Jordan stopped several feet behind her. His mouth fell open, his eyes widened, his smirk disappeared. The words he had thrown at her earlier replayed in his own mind, but this time they sounded like foolishness. Maya didn't turn, she didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She simply walked forward. She didn't need revenge. Reality was doing it for her.
The hallway leading to the private terminal felt completely different from the chaos of the main airport. It was quiet, polished, almost echoing with its own importance. The lighting was softer, golden, as if designed to illuminate wealth without announcing it. Maya walked with steady steps, but inside her chest, her heart was a trembling drum. Every footstep reminded her of how far she had come from the life she left behind. She didn't expect to encounter Jordan at the airport, let alone have him witness her walking into the part of the building he believed she didn't belong in. Behind her, she could feel him watching. His shock hung in the air like a trail of smoke. In the reflection on the shiny floor tiles, she caught glimpses of him. Stiff posture, confused stare. The smirk vanished, swallowed by disbelief. He looked like a man whose world had tilted just enough to make him dizzy. She approached the small reception desk. The woman behind it smiled politely, her professional tone warming slightly when she saw Maya. "Miss Carter, welcome. Your flight crew is preparing for arrival. May I offer you a refreshment while you wait?" Maya gave a small nod. "Water would be fine, thank you." The woman gestured toward the lounge seating, an elegant corner with plush chairs and a view of the private runway. Maya sat down, her fingers curled around the bottle of water, her breath slowly settling. But even here, she couldn't shake the feeling of Jordan's presence at the edge of her awareness, like a cold draft from a door left open. When she glanced up, she saw him a few feet away beyond the security checkpoint, speaking rapidly to the officer who had let her through. His gestures were sharp, agitated. Whatever he was saying wasn't working. The officer remained unmoved. Finally, Jordan stepped back, frustration burning across his face. He stared at Maya, his chest rising and falling with shallow, irritated breaths. He wasn't used to being denied anything. He wasn't used to being confused. And he certainly wasn't used to seeing Maya in places he believed were above her. She turned away, letting her gaze drift out the large window overlooking the tarmac. The sky was shifting into early evening, blue darkening, clouds stretching thin across a fading horizon. A few private jets were parked on the glossy surface, their white bodies gleaming under the runway lights. She remembered the message, 5:42 p.m. She checked her phone again, 5:40 p.m. 2 minutes. A quiet tension filled her veins. Not fear, anticipation, relief, pride, maybe even a little disbelief of her own. She still remembered the email she received 3 weeks ago, the one that changed everything, the one that confirmed she was no longer living quietly or unnoticed. The world had shifted for her, even if Jordan's view of her had not. She folded her hands on her lap, waiting. Then the ground began to vibrate. Soft at first, a hum,
a distant rumble, then a deeper growl building under the floor. Jordan noticed it too. A massive private jet rounded the far corner of the runway, sleek, polished, enormous, easily bigger than any plane he had ever chartered. Its engines roared a low thunder as it approached the private gate area. Ground crew rushed forward, positioning signals, preparing the path. People inside the terminal turned. Even the receptionist stepped closer to the glass. The jet gleamed under the lights, its silver trim glowing like fire. Jordan's lips parted. His eyebrows slowly lifted. His expression softened from irritation to pure disbelief. Maya didn't smile, but her heartbeat softened into a quiet, peaceful rhythm. She kept her posture calm, composed, almost still. She didn't have to announce anything. She didn't have to prove anything. She simply existed in a truth that needed no audience. The jet slowed as it rolled into position exactly in front of Private Gate C. Ground crew placed a staircase against the aircraft door. A polished black SUV approached from the left, its hazard lights blinking rhythmically. The engine cut off. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, adjusting his tie with precise movements. He walked directly toward the terminal doors. Jordan's eyes darted between the jet, the SUV, and Maya. His mind was scrambling to put the pieces together, and every second made him look more lost. His confidence, so loud and obnoxious minutes ago, had shriveled into something small and insecure. The suited man approached the security checkpoint and spoke to the officer. "I'm here for Miss Carter." Maya rose slowly, the movement smooth, graceful. The officer opened the barrier. The man stepped inside the private lounge and offered her a respectful nod. "Miss Carter, welcome. Your aircraft crew is preparing for arrival. May I offer you a refreshment while you wait?" Maya gave a small, polite smile. "Thank you. I appreciate it." He extended his arm, guiding her toward the door. As she began walking, Jordan snapped out of his shock and called out, "Maya, wait!" His voice cracked slightly. She paused, but didn't turn around immediately. She took one slow breath, then turned her head just enough to see him. He jogged closer to the glass barrier, stopping on the other side, his face pale with confusion and panic. "What is this? What are you doing?" She said nothing. He glanced at the jet, then at her, then back at the jet again. "Is this yours?" The question stumbled out of his mouth like a wounded animal, full of disbelief and denial. He shook his head, stepping closer. "No, no way. That's impossible. Maya, stop joking. Tell me what's going on." Her eyes remained calm. She didn't owe him answers. Not now, not ever. The suited man opened the door to the runway. A soft gust of cool air pushed into the lounge. Jordan pressed his palm against the glass as if trying to break a barrier that wasn't physical. "Maya," he whispered, I thought you were struggling." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with the kind of quiet strength he never knew her capable of. "That's the problem. You never thought." He flinched. She continued, "You assumed, you judged, you diminished me every time it made you feel bigger." He swallowed, his voice suddenly small. Are you famous now? Rich?" She gave him one last look, gentle, distant, untouchable. "My life isn't something you're entitled to know." Jordan's breath caught. Without another word, she turned and walked through the open door, stepping onto the private runway. The wind lifted her hair slightly, the engines humming in the background like a soundtrack written for her rise, not his expectations. The man guided her to the base of the staircase. "Take your time," he said quietly. She placed her hand on the railing and slowly climbed, each step taking her further from the woman Jordan once controlled and closer to the woman she had become. Jordan watched helplessly through the glass, his reflection staring back at him, small, powerless, and forgotten. And Maya didn't look back even once.
The interior of the jet was quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. Soft, golden lights illuminated the polished wood panels, and seats wide enough to stretch across felt more like pieces of luxury furniture than airplane chairs. Maya stepped inside slowly, absorbing the space with a steady breath. She had flown privately before, but never like this, never on something that carried an $80 million price tag. The scent of cedar and clean leather filled the cabin, comforting yet powerful, reminding her of the world she worked her way into through grit, discipline, and doors she forced open herself. A flight attendant approached, offering a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Carter. Can I take your bag?" Mai handed it over, her lips curving into a polite smile. "Thank you." The attendant placed the bag gently into an overhead compartment and gestured to the seating area. "We'll be taking off shortly. Please, make yourself comfortable." As Maya sat, she took a moment just to breathe. The cushions contoured to her back, supportive and soft. Outside the window, she could still see the private terminal, the large glass doors, the polished floors, and behind them, Jordan. He stood frozen, watching the jet, watching her. His posture rigid, his face pale with shock, and something much darker beneath it. Regret. Panic. A crack in his carefully maintained superiority. It was strange. After everything he had said, after every moment he had tried to belittle her, Maya didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel the surge of satisfaction she expected. Instead, she felt light, free, peaceful. Like a heavy weight had finally lifted, making room for a new kind of steadiness in her chest. The door closed with a soft click. The engines hummed louder. But before the jet could begin taxiing, the man in the tailored suit, the same one who's escorted her, stepped inside and approached her seat. His expression carried professional calm, but his eyes held warmth. "Miss Carter," he said, "there's something I'd like to confirm before we depart." She lifted her gaze toward him. "Of course." He sat across from her, folding his hands neatly. "Your host asked me to deliver a message earlier, but because of the crowd inside, I preferred to wait until you were aboard. He wanted to remind you that everything you've earned is the result of your own work. You deserve this flight, this moment, this success." Her shoulders relaxed. "He said that?" "Yes," the man nodded, "and he said he is deeply honored to be part of tonight's event with you." A small, genuine smile tugged at her lips, one she rarely allowed to appear in front of strangers. "Thank you. Please let him know I appreciate the message." He nodded, then added, "It's rare, you know, someone rising from what you came from, reaching where you are now. People talk about you. The right people." Maya remained silent, but her eyes softened. She didn't need the praise, but hearing it after the humiliation Jordan tried to inflict, after the years she spent rebuilding, strengthening, pushing, felt like an acknowledgement she didn't realize she needed. The man stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and bowed his head respectfully. "We'll take off in 3 minutes." When he left, Maya turned toward the window again. Jordan was still there, still watching, still trying to understand how the woman he left behind had stepped into a life he never imagined for her, a life he believed was reserved for men like him, wealthy, privileged, protected by a world that bent in his favor. She rested her elbow on the armrest, her chin lightly touching her knuckles. The engines roared deeper. The jet began to move. The ground seemed to glide beneath them. The airport lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. Jordan placed a hand on the glass. It looked like desperation, or realization, or both. But Maya didn't know, and she didn't care enough to analyze it. Their story was over long before today. The jet turned onto the runway.
a soft vibration rolled through the cabin. The flight attendant made sure she was buckled, then stepped back, bracing herself for takeoff. As the jet accelerated, she felt the steady push against her back, the sharp upward tilt, the weightlessness that followed. The runway fell away beneath her. The terminal became smaller, smaller, then a streak of lights, then nothing at all. And for the first time in years, Maya felt a deep, powerful stillness inside her. A stillness born not from silence but from truth. She had made it out. Not just out of a bad marriage, out of the limitations he tried to place on her, out of the shadows he cast, out of the small box he wanted her to fit into so he could feel bigger, richer, more important. She closed her eyes as the jet pierced through a layer of clouds, the cabin glowing with a faint white light reflected from outside. Up here, everything felt calmer, cleaner, honest. After a long moment, she opened her eyes again. A different attendant approached with a silver tray. "Would you like something to drink, Miss Carter? Water? Tea? Champagne?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Water is fine." The attendant poured it elegantly into a crystal glass and placed it on a coaster next to her. "The pilot estimates a 2-hour flight. If you need anything at all, please let us know." "Thank you," Maya said softly. As she took a sip, she felt the coolness slide down her throat, soothing, grounding. Her phone vibrated. A notification. She glanced at the screen. A message from her assistant. "Everything is confirmed for tonight. The Foundation representatives will be waiting for you upon arrival. They're excited." She set the phone aside, exhaling slowly. Tonight was not just a meeting. It was a milestone. The partnership she was flying to finalize would change thousands of lives, scholarships, grants, mentorship programs for young Black women in business, tech, and aviation. A vision she created, funded, and built brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. Her organization was no longer small. It was a national force. She built it herself. And tonight she would announce the biggest expansion yet. But for a moment, she allowed her mind to drift back, not to Jordan, not to the humiliation he tried to cause, but to the moment she chose to leave him. The night she packed her bags while he was at another gala, wearing another look of polished indifference, surrounded by people who told him he was perfect. She waited until morning to tell him. He laughed then too, certain she'd come back, certain she couldn't survive without him. He never imagined she would flourish. He never imagined she would grow beyond him. He never imagined she would rise so high he wouldn't even be able to see her from the ground he stood on. The jet soared smoothly through the sky, the world below shrinking into a mosaic of lights and shadows. Maya closed her eyes again and let the hum of the engines lull her into a quiet moment of reflection. This wasn't revenge. This was healing. This was becoming. This was justice, not the loud kind, but the kind that unfolded in silence, in success, in steady, unstoppable growth. She leaned her head back against the seat, letting the peace settle deeper in her chest. Tonight would be the beginning of a new chapter. And today, outside that terminal, behind those glass doors, Jordan had witnessed the final sentence of an old one.
The night sky outside the jet had deepened into a velvet dark, streaked with faint silver clouds. City lights glittered far below, like quiet constellations scattered across the earth. Maya watched them through the window, her reflection faintly superimposed onto the glass, calm, composed, and yet thoughtful in the way someone becomes when life shifts beneath them faster than expected. For a while, she simply breathed. The hum of the engines created a kind of rhythm, slow and steady, almost like the heartbeat of the aircraft itself. It gave her something to settle into,
a grounded cadence rising above the world she'd once believed she needed validation from. After several minutes, she reached into her bag, pulling out a thick folder secured with a leather strap. She placed it on the table in front of her and opened it. Inside were documents, projections, partnership agreements, and proposals under her foundation's name. At the very top was the newest file, one that meant more to her than any other: the Maya Carter Initiative for Aviation Equity. She traced her finger along the bold letters. This project wasn't just about scholarships. It was about history, about changing who got to take space in industries still dominated by privilege, about showing young black women that the sky wasn't something to dream about, it was something to step into. A soft knock at the cabin door broke her focus. The attendant peeked inside gently. "Pardon me, Miss Carter. The pilot asked if you would like to review the flight path or be informed when we begin descent." Maya nodded. "Please let me know about the descent, and thank you." "Of course," the attendant said, smiling before stepping out again. The cabin fell quiet once more, the silence warm and unthreatening. Maya leaned back in her seat, closing the folder but keeping it on her lap. She pressed her fingers lightly against the smooth leather, letting its texture remind her of what tonight symbolized. She wasn't flying to a party. She wasn't flying to impress anyone. She was flying toward purpose, toward something bigger than herself. Her phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't her assistant. It was an unknown number. A flicker of tension pressed at her ribs before she opened the message. "You can ignore me, but you can't rewrite the past. I still deserve answers." Maya stared at the screen, her breath catching. Jordan. The realization hit instantly, sharp, unwelcome, invasive. She hadn't expected him to reach out this soon. She hadn't given him her number, which meant he either still had it saved or dug it up the moment he got desperate enough. Her fingers hovered over the keypad, but she didn't type anything. She set the phone face down on the table, closing her eyes briefly to steady herself. The past didn't deserve space in the life she was building. She inhaled, exhaled, and let the message sit unread. Minutes passed before she opened her eyes again, but when she reached for her glass of water, the phone buzzed once more. Another message. "We need to talk. I was wrong about something. Call me." Maya's jaw tightened. There was a time in her life when those words would have made her pause, when Jordan's voice still had the power to anchor or devastate her. But growth teaches a person how to detach from the ghosts that once controlled them. She pushed the phone aside. No, not now. Not ever in the way he wanted. The jet continued its smooth journey, slicing through the sky like a silver arrow aimed at a future he was no longer part of. She forced herself to breathe deeply again before returning to her folder. She flipped through pages filled with charts, goals, and handwritten notes about the Foundation's mission. Each line felt like stitching, repairing pieces of her that Jordan once tore into: her confidence, her ambition, her belief in her own capability. She paused at a photograph tucked in the back, a young student smiling proudly in front of a flight simulator, holding a certificate bearing the Foundation's logo, her first scholarship recipient. A girl who once wrote in her application, "People say girls like us don't belong around planes." Maya closed her eyes at the memory. She remembered the moment she decided to fund the girl's entire training, and she remembered the day that girl called her crying, saying she'd passed her first aviation exam. Moments like that were why she worked until her fingers cramped, why she stayed up through endless nights refining proposals. It wasn't for recognition, it wasn't for money, it wasn't for validation from the world Jordan came from. It was because she knew what it felt like to be underestimated. Her chest warmed slightly. When the intercom crackled to life, she looked up. "Miss Carter, this is your pilot speaking. We'll be beginning our descent in approximately 26 minutes. Please let us know if you need anything before landing." "Thank you," she replied softly. She placed the folder aside and stretched her legs, allowing her muscles to ease into the moment. The city they were approaching glowed faintly ahead, just a distant line of lights hugging the horizon. Her phone lit up again. She ignored it. It lit up again and again. She finally flipped it over, expecting another message. But what she saw wasn't just a text, it was a call. Jordan's name flashing across the screen. Her stomach tightened. She let it ring until it stopped. Seconds later, a notification appeared. "You can't erase what we had. I want to talk in person. Don't make me chase you. I know where you're flying." Her blood cooled. How would he know where I was flying? Maya's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from cold awareness. Jordan was used to pulling strings, using connections, bypassing boundaries. He always believed the world was open to him in ways it wasn't to others, especially not to her. But this time, things were different. This time, she had her own connections, her own resources, her own power. She pressed the side button and turned the phone completely off. The cabin fell quiet again, but the silence felt different now. Heavier. Layered with a reminder the past didn't disappear just because she outgrew it. She shifted in her seat, grounding herself, reminding herself the night ahead held far more important things than the man she left behind. The plane dipped slightly, beginning descent. Lights outside grew brighter. The world below expanded into recognizable streets and grids. The attendant re-entered, her expression gentle. "We'll have wheels down soon, Miss Carter. Your transport team will meet you directly on the runway." Maya nodded, smoothing the front of her blazer. "Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful flight." "It's our pleasure," the woman said with warmth. When the attendant stepped away, Maya looked out the window again. But this time, something inside her felt unsettled. Not shaken, but alert. Her intuition whispered that tonight's peace would not be simple, and Jordan's messages replayed in her mind like distant echoes she refused to let control her. The jet dipped lower. The runway lights brightened. Her future waited just beyond the landing gear's touch. But so did the past, and it wasn't done trying to follow her.
The terminal lights reflected in the polished airport windows as Naomi walked slowly toward the private departures wing, her earrings catching soft glints of gold. Behind her, the regular terminal buzz faded, but the weight of what had happened still clung to her like smoke. Marcus's insults, the white passengers staring at her as if she were invisible, the way he had smirked while security questioned her. Even now, hours later, her chest felt tight. But she kept moving. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. Each step was a reminder that she had survived worse and risen from it. Yet tonight hurt differently. Not because Marcus humiliated her. She had seen him do worse during their marriage. What hurt was realizing she still reacted, even after all this time. Somewhere inside her, the little wounds he carved years ago still pulsed. She exhaled slowly, trying to let the tension drain out as she passed the velvet rope leading to the elite lounge reserved for private aviation guests. A uniformed attendant noticed her and straightened. "Good evening, ma'am. May I—" His voice caught slightly when he recognized her face from the jet's manifest. His posture changed instantly. Respectful, alert. "Ms. Carter, we've been expecting you. Your crew is already preparing the cabin." Naomi nodded politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She walked into the lounge where quiet jazz floated through the air. The lights were dimmer here, warmer, softer, a far contrast from the fluorescent chaos outside. In one corner, a couple wearing diamonds glanced her way, surprised to see a young black woman breeze past the attendants without being stopped. Naomi felt their eyes lingering. She ignored them. She had stopped explaining her presence in places like this years ago. Her success did not exist to make anyone comfortable. She sat on a leather sofa near the tall window overlooking the tarmac. Outside, the jet waited, sleek, silver-white, its nose angled slightly up, its engines gleaming under the overhead floodlights. The same jet that had made the entire terminal freeze. The same jet that made Marcus's voice break when the pilot addressed her as "ma'am." She closed her eyes for a moment. It wasn't the jet that defined her. It wasn't the money. It was the years of work no one saw. The rejections, the late-night studying, the grants she fought for, the breakthroughs she produced. Her biotech startup hadn't become a global leader because of luck. She built it molecule by molecule. But right now, she didn't feel powerful. She felt tired. A soft vibration buzzed in her pocket. Her assistant, Priya, had texted, "Want me to file a complaint against the security officer? You know what he did was discriminatory." Naomi stared at the message. Security hadn't touched her, but the tone, the suspicion, the dismissive way he assumed she didn't belong, yes, she had felt that 1,000 times before in 1,000 different ways. She typed back slowly. Not now. Maybe later. She wasn't sure if she meant it. She slipped her phone away and leaned back. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, but the quiet was interrupted by footsteps. A man cleared his throat softly, stopping a respectful distance from her. "Excuse me, Miss Carter." She looked up. An older white man in a Navy aviation uniform stood before her. His hair was gray at the temples, his posture straight and precise. His badge identified him as Captain R. Donovan, the pilot of her jet. Naomi stood. "Captain," she said. He gave a slight bow of the head. "I wanted to personally apologize for what happened at the terminal. We were informed by the crew." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You didn't have to come." "I did," he said quietly. "We've seen things like this too many times. Some passengers face more obstacles just walking through an airport than others do traveling the world." His voice carried a sincerity that caught her off guard. "It's all right," she said simply. He nodded once. "Your jet will be ready to depart in 20 minutes. If you need anything, the crew is at your service." She watched him walk away. Something warm stirred in her chest. Gratitude, maybe. A reminder that not everyone watched her with suspicion. She gathered her bag and prepared to head toward the boarding entrance. But before she could move, she heard hurried footsteps, and then a voice she instantly recognized. "Naomi, wait!" Her stomach clenched. Marcus. She turned slowly, her expression cooling. He stood a few feet away, breathing hard as if he had jogged across the airport. His suit jacket hung unevenly, his tie crooked, sweat beading lightly at his temples. His eyes darted nervously around the room, clearly aware he didn't belong in the private lounge. "What do you want, Marcus?" He swallowed. I wanted to talk to you. Please." She crossed her arms. "About what? You made yourself perfectly clear earlier." "That was... Look, Naomi, I didn't mean for things to go like that." Her jaw tightened. "That's the closest thing to accountability you've ever said." He flinched. "Naomi, listen, I wasn't trying to be..." He hesitated, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. "Look, the airport was stressful. I was running late, and then seeing you there, I just reacted." "Oh, I know. You always just react. And somehow, your reactions always land on the same kind of people." His cheeks flushed. "That's not fair. It's accurate." He rubbed his forehead. "I didn't know the jet was yours. I swear if I had..." She laughed once incredulously. "So, if I were rich enough, you'd treat me like a person?" He opened his mouth.
but nothing came out. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, he exhaled shakily. Naomi, I messed up with you. Years ago. And today. And I'm not proud of it. But I don't want things to end like this between us. They ended a long time ago, she said quietly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Just tell me how you did it. How you ended up with all of this. He gestured toward the window, toward the jet waiting outside. You were never... during our marriage, I didn't think that you could become more successful than you. He looked away. She stared at him for a long moment, letting the truth sit between them like a cold stone. Marcus, she said softly, you didn't see me back then, not really. You saw what you wanted to see. And when I outgrew the version of me you were comfortable with, you made sure I felt small. He stiffened, but didn't deny it. I didn't become who I am to prove anything to you. I became this because I refused to let your limitations define my future. He blinked, his eyes moistening slightly. Naomi, I'm sorry. She studied him. A part of her believed he meant it. Another part knew he only apologized after consequences appeared. She let out a slow breath. I don't need your apology, she said. I just need distance. He nodded numbly, his shoulders sinking. From the window, the jet's cabin lights flickered to life, casting a glow across the tarmac. The captain stepped out briefly, signaling that the final preparations were complete. Naomi picked up her bag. Goodbye, Marcus. He stared at her, regret heavy in his eyes. Goodbye. She turned and walked toward the private boarding gate. With each step, she felt lighter. Not because she forgave him, but because he no longer controlled any part of her life. When she reached the top of the jet staircase, she paused, looking out over the airport. The same place where she had once stood in humiliation now lay far beneath her. She boarded the jet. The door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click.
The moment Naomi stepped inside the jet, a warm, quiet glow replaced everything the airport had made her feel. Subtle lighting traced the cabin ceiling. Cream-colored leather seats stretched in a row, each one angled for comfort, not display. The air carried a hint of lavender and clean citrus. A place designed for calm. A place she earned. A flight attendant approached with a respectful smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Carter. Can I offer you something to drink before takeoff?" "Water is fine," Naomi replied softly. She slid into her seat, exhaled, and felt the fabric of tension unravel inside her chest, thread by thread. The safety of the cabin made her realize just how much pressure she'd been holding. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the emotional whiplash of the evening. Humiliation, shock, confrontation, unresolved hurt. The attendant returned with chilled water and placed it gently on the table beside her. "If you need anything, please let us know." "Thank you," Naomi said. The cabin door closed. Through the small window, she saw Marcus still standing in the lounge, frozen in place, his expression unreadable through the glass. She didn't look long. A soft chime echoed overhead. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure," the captain's voice announced. The engines hummed to life, a deep, steady vibration she had always found strangely reassuring. Power controlled, precisely engineered, a kind of order her life had not always known. She lifted her glass and took a sip, then leaned back and closed her eyes as the jet began to taxi. But the moment she allowed her mind to drift, memories flooded in. Memories she had spent years burying under success, discipline, and work. Marcus yelling at her for embarrassing him at corporate dinners. Marcus telling her she was lucky he married her. Marcus reminding her, too often, that she was a black woman in circles built for people like him, not her. She remembered the night she left, packing her bags while he laughed, convinced she would come back like she always did. She remembered crying on the bus because she didn't have money for a taxi.
She remembered promising herself she would never again let anyone decide her value. The plane turned onto the runway, engines deepening. She inhaled as the acceleration pressed her gently into her seat. The jet lifted from the ground, leaving behind the terminal's harsh lights, the stairs, the voices, the pain. The city shrank beneath the clouds as the jet climbed through the night sky. Only after they reached altitude did she open her eyes. Her phone buzzed. A voicemail. From her mother. Naomi hesitated, then pressed play. "Baby, I heard about what happened at that airport. Priya called me, and I know you told her not to, but she worries, and so do I." Naomi stared at the seat in front of her, jaw tightening. Her mother's voice continued, steady but filled with warmth. "You don't have to pretend you're made of steel all the time. What they did today wasn't right. And I know you always try to let things go, but you don't have to. You don't have to be strong alone." Naomi blinked hard, forcing the burn behind her eyes away. She ended the message before she dissolved. The truth was, she had been alone most of her life, even before Marcus, even before she built her company. Success didn't erase isolation, it sometimes magnified it. The captain's voice came through the speaker again. "Miss Carter, when you're ready, feel free to visit the lounge section. We've arranged it per your assistant's instructions." She frowned slightly. "I didn't request anything." But she stood, curious. Toward the back of the cabin, a sliding door opened into a suite-like section, one she had rarely used. Warm lighting washed over the room. A small dining table had been set with her favorite herbal tea. A soft blanket lay folded on the couch. On the table was a note. "Thought you might need a moment to breathe. Priya." Naomi's throat tightened again. She picked up the blanket, soft, familiar, comforting, and sat down. She wrapped it around herself and let her shoulders loosen. Finally the tension cracked. She cried. Not loud, not messy, not shaking, just soft, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. Grief she didn't have words for. She cried for the old wounds, for the humiliation she felt hours ago, for the fear she wouldn't admit. She cried for the woman she used to be, and for the woman she became. And when she finished, she breathed easier. A knock came gently on the open doorframe. The captain himself stood there. "Miss Carter, when you have a moment, someone just radioed us. It concerns your ex-husband." Her body went stiff. What happened? "He was involved in a confrontation at the airport," the captain said. "Security called the local police after he refused to leave the private lounge. They detained him temporarily." He paused, watching her reaction carefully. "He claimed he needed to talk to you." Naomi stared. Part of her wanted to laugh, another part wanted to sigh, but mostly she felt nothing, just a familiar exhaustion. "Is he all right?" she asked finally. "Yes. They're releasing him shortly." "Then that's all that matters." The captain nodded respectfully, then turned to leave. But before he did, he hesitated. "Ms. Carter, I've flown for private clients for more than 25 years. I've seen power used in many forms. Money, influence, fear. But what you showed today, self-control, dignity, that's not something everyone has, especially under pressure." She blinked, surprised by the genuine tone in his voice. "Thank you," she said softly. He smiled gently and left. Naomi sat still for a long moment, letting his words settle. Self-control. Dignity. She had never thought of her silence as strength. She had always thought of it as survival. The jet hummed steadily through the night. Below her, cities passed like constellations scattered across the world. A message popped up from her attorney. "He's already reaching out to some of your old acquaintances, wants to understand how you got where you are. Just letting you know." Naomi exhaled sharply. Marcus wasn't just sorry. He was obsessed. Old patterns, old insecurities, old control. She typed back, "Block him. And make sure everyone else does too. I'm done." Her attorney responded immediately. "Already handled. Rest." She placed her phone face down. She walked back to the main cabin, sat by the window, and watched the night pass thousands of feet below. And for the first time in a long time, she felt an unfamiliar sensation settle inside her chest. Peace. But that peace wouldn't last, because Marcus was not the kind of man who accepted being powerless. And deep down, Naomi knew, whatever storm he was about to bring, she had to be ready.
Naomi didn't expect to fall asleep, not after everything that had happened, but the soft vibration of the jet and the emotional exhaustion pressing against every part of her finally pulled her into a light, fragile sleep. When she woke, the cabin lights were dimmed and the horizon outside glowed with the first hints of dawn, soft blue melting into pale gold. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, before sitting up and stretching quietly. A quiet knock sounded at her side. "Miss Carter?" the attendant whispered. "We're about 90 minutes from landing. Breakfast is ready whenever you'd like." "Thank you," Naomi said, her voice still rough from sleep. She placed her hands on her lap and inhaled deeply. Her muscles felt heavy, yet calm, like the storm inside her had settled into a low tide. She stood and moved toward the small lounge again, where a simple breakfast tray had been placed. Fresh fruit, tea, warm croissants. But before she sat down, she noticed her phone flashing with several notifications. She hesitated. Her peace still felt too fragile to risk shattering. Still, she picked up the phone. The first notification made her eyebrows draw together. News alert. Prominent CEO detained at airport after heated incident. She clicked it. A grainy photo showed Marcus being escorted by 2 police officers at the private terminal. His face was contorted. Anger, frustration, humiliation. The headline mentioned his uncooperative behavior, disruption of airport protocol, and attempts to force access to a restricted area. Her stomach tightened, not with fear, but with a strange mixture of pity and fatigue. Marcus had always believed consequences were for other people, not him. Never him. She exited the article. More notifications waited. A message from her assistant. "Morning update. The board has kept quiet so far, but I heard Marcus made calls to 2 investors. Don't worry, I've already spoken to both. You're clear." Next message. "Also, he tried contacting your mother. She didn't respond." A flicker of heat flared in her ribs. He knew the line he crossed when he involved her mother, and yet he always crossed it anyway. She scrolled further. One last message from her security director. "He's at your old penthouse address, trying to get in. We've notified building security. He won't find anything. You haven't lived there for 3 years." Naomi's heart went cold. Marcus wasn't just trying to talk, he was actively searching, digging, pushing. She set the phone down, steadying herself. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, calm as ever. "Miss Carter, whenever you're ready, I can join you to discuss your arrival security plan. We've updated it per new developments." Of course they had. Of course they knew she was dealing with something deeper than an airport altercation. She rubbed her temples and whispered, "I should have known he wouldn't stop." But knowing didn't mean tolerating. Not anymore. She moved toward the main cabin and pressed a small button on the wall. A moment later, the captain stepped inside, tall, composed, his uniform crisp, even after hours in the sky. "Good morning," he said kindly. "I hope you were able to get some rest." "A little, but it seems I woke up to a situation." "Yes," he said gently. "Your team briefed us. We've arranged a secured exit route. The airport staff is already preparing for your arrival. You won't need to enter the main terminal at all." Naomi nodded. "Thank you." "If he attempts to follow you," the captain continued, "we have authorization from airport security to restrict access to the runway.
Your safety is our priority." That word, safety, landed heavily. For a long time, Naomi had never truly felt safe. Not in her home, not in her marriage, not in the world that measured her by her skin before her accomplishments. It had taken years to feel protected. She met the captain's eyes. "I appreciate everything you're doing." He inclined his head. "We're here for you, Miss Carter." He excused himself, and Naomi returned to her seat near the window. Below, the sky began turning pink, splitting open into morning. She stared at the colors, as if searching for answers inside them. A soft vibration buzzed on the table, her phone again. Ignoring it didn't feel right anymore, not with him escalating. She picked it up. 7 missed calls, 4 voicemails, 1 message. From Marcus. "You don't get to walk away from this conversation. I know where you're going. We're not finished." Her pulse jumped. Her throat tightened. He never learned. He never stopped believing she was something he owned. Her fingers hovered over the delete button. But she didn't press it. Instead, she opened her contacts, scrolled down, and clicked on a name she rarely used. ATT Lydia Harris. Her lawyer, the person who helped her escape that marriage. She hit call. The moment Lydia answered, her voice was alert and sharp. "Naomi, are you okay?" "I'm fine, but Marcus is spiraling. He's pulling investors into this. He's trying to find me, and he's threatening to show up wherever I land. I saw the news footage. It's worse than I thought. He's losing control." "I need legal boundaries," Naomi whispered. "Real ones. Iron walls he can't push through this time." "You want a restraining order?" "And more," Naomi said. "If he contacts anyone in my family again, I want him charged. I want every attempt at harassment documented, every violation recorded." Lydia was silent for a moment, then said, "You're serious?" "I'm done," Naomi replied. "Completely done." "I'll file everything this morning," Lydia said. "By noon, he won't be able to contact you legally without consequences." Naomi exhaled. "Thank you." "Naomi," Lydia added softly, "I'm proud of you. This isn't fear. This is strength." Naomi swallowed. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears back. When the call ended, she stared outside again. Dawn had fully broken, warm golden light painting the clouds. A symbol. A reminder. She wasn't going backwards. She wasn't the woman he belittled. She wasn't someone he could intimidate anymore. The attendant stepped forward gently. "Miss Carter, we've begun descent." Naomi nodded, fastening her seatbelt. The jet dipped, gliding slowly toward a distant runway where her future waited, and where Marcus, she feared, might already be trying to interfere. As the wheels extended beneath the aircraft, a strange calm settled over her. If he tried to confront her again, she wouldn't fold, she wouldn't shrink, she wouldn't run. Not anymore. Because this time, the world would see exactly who she had become.
The descent felt longer than usual, slow, deliberate, like the jet itself understood the weight of what waited on the ground. Naomi rested her hands on the armrest, palms warm but steady. Her breath came slow, controlled. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. But she was alert, every instinct sharpened by the last 24 hours. Through the window, the world grew larger. Fields, roads, then buildings. A private runway stretched like a silver thread through the early morning haze. Beyond it, sunlight began to spill across the horizon, painting everything gold, almost peaceful. Almost. The jet touched down with a soft jolt. The wheels hissed against the runway. The engines reversed, slowing the aircraft to a gentle roll. Naomi sat upright, lowering her chin slightly as though bracing for the unknown. The attendant appeared by her seat. "Welcome back, Miss Carter. Your transport team is waiting outside. We've coordinated security with the airport staff." "Thank you," Naomi said. She unbuckled her belt. Her reflection in the window stared back, composed, intentional, unbroken, a woman who no longer lived by fear, a woman who refused to shrink in the shadow of a man who once tried to define her value. The jet slowed to a stop. But something felt wrong. She felt it before she saw it. A prickling chill ran along her arms. The captain stepped out of the cockpit and approached her immediately. His voice was low, careful. "Miss Carter, please remain seated for a moment." The tension in his tone tightened her stomach. "What's happening?" He inhaled. "Security reports movement outside the perimeter." Her breath hitched, but she wasn't surprised. Marcus. Of course he was here. Of course he pushed past every boundary. Is he on the runway? Not exactly. He's at the edge of the restricted zone, trying to talk his way through. He arrived before sunrise. Her jaw clenched. He's been waiting? Persistent people often arrive early, the captain said. It wasn't judgment, it was warning. The attendant glanced between them anxiously. Naomi lifted her chin. Is he inside the restricted area? No, the captain said, but he's trying, and he's angry. Naomi exhaled slowly. Then let's proceed with protocol. The captain nodded once. Then to the attendant. Hold all doors until security gives us clearance. Naomi closed her eyes. She let the adrenaline rise. Let her heartbeat quicken. Let the memory of his last message resurface like a dark echo. You don't get to walk away from this conversation. She opened her eyes. He was wrong. She did get to walk away. She already had. A soft knock came from outside the cabin door. 3 taps, coded. Clearance. The captain opened it a few inches, waiting for the signal. A man in an airport security jacket nodded sharply. Zone clear. Miss Carter's route is secured. Escort team ready. The captain turned to Naomi. You'll exit through the rear stairs. Your car is positioned exactly 20 feet from the foot of the steps. No detours. She stood, smoothed her blazer, and picked up her bag. Her movements were slow, deliberate. Her mind felt sharper than it had in years. When she stepped into the doorway, sunlight pushed into the cabin, warm, bright, almost defiant. A reminder that she wasn't walking into darkness. She was walking into choice, into freedom. She descended the steps. Her heels struck metal. Wind brushed against her cheeks. And then she heard him. Naomi! Her name ripped through the morning air, raw and frantic. She didn't turn. She didn't falter. But security did. 3 officers moved instantly, forming a wall between the restricted zone and the runway. Sir, you are not authorized here. Stand back. More shouting. Another officer barking orders. Marcus's voice rose again, louder this time, cracking with desperation. Naomi, don't you walk away from me! She continued down the steps, refusing to give him even the satisfaction of eye contact. But she didn't need to see him to imagine his expression. She remembered it from their last months of marriage, anger layered with disbelief, threaded with entitlement. To him, her silence was rebellion. Her independence was betrayal. Her success was impossible unless he had shaped it. She stepped onto the runway. Her transport team, a trio of black SUVs, stood waiting, engines running. Another yell. You owe me a conversation! Her jaw tightened. She reached the SUV door. And then, a sudden bang. Not a gunshot, a slammed metal gate. Marcus had shoved himself against the barrier, rattling it violently. You think you're better than me now? You think you get to erase everything? Walk around with your private jet like you're, what, above consequences? The officer shouted over him. Back away from the gate! But Marcus kept going. You wouldn't be anything without me. You hear me? Nothing. Everybody knows it. Naomi closed her eyes for a half second, exhaling a long, tired breath. This was the man she left.
this fury, this entitlement, this man who saw her value only when it slipped from his grasp. She opened the SUV door, but before she climbed in, she finally turned. She didn't speak. She didn't move closer. She just looked at him. A calm, level stare, one that could cut through every lie he told himself about her. Marcus froze, just for a moment. Her silence, her calm, struck him harder than any words. He gripped the fence with white knuckles, chest heaving, anger twisting his face into something almost unrecognizable. Naomi held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned away. "No! No! Don't you turn your back on!" The SUV door closed, cutting him off. The car began to roll slowly, security escorting it on both sides. Through the tinted window, Naomi watched the sky. Not him. Watched the world she had chosen. Inside the quiet SUV cabin, her phone buzzed gently. A message from her lawyer. Restraining order approved. Effective immediately. He cannot come within 300 feet of you or contact you in any form. You're protected now. Naomi felt a tremor move through her. Not fear, not pain. Relief. Pure, vivid relief. Her eyes closed. But the moment lasted only a few breaths, because the driver spoke gently. "Miss Carter, we've been informed something else." She straightened. "What is it?" He swallowed. "Marcus isn't leaving the airport." Naomi's breath paused. "He's refusing. He keeps repeating one thing over and over." Naomi's voice was steady. "What is he saying?" The driver looked at her through the rearview mirror. "He says he hasn't said the thing he came here to say." Naomi's heartbeat slowed. Solid, controlled, resolute. She wasn't going back. She wasn't turning around. If he had something to confess, to regret, to unravel, it would no longer be her burden. She gazed ahead, watching the sunrise spill across the highway as the convoy sped forward. She wasn't finished becoming who she was meant to be, and he wasn't finished falling apart without her. The final confrontation was still coming.
The jet cut through the sky like a silver arrow, carving silence above the clouds. But inside, the cabin was filled with a strange, heavy quiet that neither Maya nor Jonathan knew how to break. The night stretched endlessly out of the windows, the stars sharp and bright against the darkness. The soft hum of the engines felt like a heartbeat, steady, distant, almost calming. Maya sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap, her posture graceful but tense. Her eyes were fixed on the window, but he could tell she wasn't really looking at anything. She was thinking, processing everything that the last few hours had unearthed. Jonathan, for the first time in years, felt small. Not because of her success, not because of the jet, not because she had risen higher than he ever believed she could. No. He felt small because he finally saw the full weight of his choices. The careless words, the blind privilege, the silent dismissals. The things he used to excuse as not a big deal. They had been a big deal. They had been everything. And Maya had carried them alone. "Thank you for coming with me," she finally said, her voice low but sincere. He looked up, surprised. I wasn't sure you wanted me here." "I didn't," she said honestly. "Not at first." Then she sighed. "But life has a strange way of confronting us with what we need, not what we want." The honesty stung, but he deserved it. The flight attendant quietly placed 2 glasses of warm chamomile tea on the table between them and slipped away without interrupting the moment. Jonathan leaned forward. "Maya, you asked me earlier why I walked away from our marriage. I think maybe I never answered you properly." She didn't turn from the window. "You said it was stress,
pressure, work. That you weren't ready. I lied, he whispered, the words tasting bitter. I was ready. I just wasn't strong enough. She finally looked at him fully, calm, unreadable, waiting. He swallowed. People talked. My business partners, investors, clients, family. They made comments about us. About you. About how it would affect the company image. About how a black wife made me look. Maya flinched. Not visibly, but in that subtle, almost invisible way that only someone who'd spent years hiding pain would notice. He continued. And then, he said, breathing unsteadily, I convinced myself it was better for you if I left. That you deserved someone who wasn't afraid. Someone who would stand beside you, not behind whispers. Her voice was steady, but her eyes gleamed with hurt that had lived there too long. You didn't leave for me, Jonathan. You left for yourself. He lowered his head. I know. And you let me think the problem was me, she said softly. You let me think I wasn't enough for you. That my culture, my skin, my identity made me difficult. His throat tightened painfully. He nodded, tears burning behind his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. Not yet. Maya looked away for a long moment before she spoke again. You know what the cruelest part was? He braced himself. I forgave you, even when I didn't know the truth. I forgave you because I loved you, and I blamed myself for things that were never my fault. Jonathan's breath hitched. He had expected anger, maybe even hatred, but forgiveness? That was something he had never earned. Maya, I can never undo what I did. I can never take back the ways I hurt you. But I need you to know, watching you tonight, seeing everything you built, I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. Her expression softened, just barely. And that man I was, I'm not him anymore. Maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe it changes nothing. But I needed you to know. The plane lights dimmed as they began descending, the cabin filling with a gentle golden glow. Maya exhaled slowly. Jonathan, I didn't invite you into my jet for closure. I didn't bring you because I wanted an apology. He blinked, confused. I brought you, she said, because I wanted you to see what your doubt couldn't destroy. I wanted you to see that even when you didn't fight for me, I fought for myself. He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. And, she added quietly, I wanted you to know that what you lost had nothing to do with my worth and everything to do with your fear. Jonathan's chest tightened with a painful honesty. You're right, he whispered. The landing gear extended beneath them, a soft rumble echoing through the floor. He looked at her again. I'm sorry, Maya, for every moment I made you feel small, for every time I chose comfort over courage, for every part of your life I didn't honor. She watched him for a long, searching moment before she spoke. I forgive you, truly. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. It doesn't mean we go back to what we were. It means I'm letting go of the weight of what you did. He nodded, tears finally escaping. I understand. The jet touched down smoothly, lights from the private runway glowing through the windows. Maya stood up, gathering her coat and her bag, her posture dignified, strong, radiant. When she turned to him, she extended her hand, not in romance, not in invitation, but in peace. He took it, and for the first time he felt what true humility was.
As they stepped out of the jet, the night air washed over them, cool, crisp, filled with possibility. A convoy of sleek black cars waited on the tarmac, headlights glowing like sentinels. A young woman approached Maya. "Dr. Bailey, your car is ready." Jonathan froze. "Bailey?" he repeated softly. "You're married?" Maya smiled gently. A soft, warm smile, not triumphant, not sharp, simply honest. "No," she said, "not anymore. Bailey is my name, my own. I chose it. I built my life with it." She stepped forward, her silhouette framed by the golden runway lights. Jonathan watched her, awestruck, not because of the plane, or the security convoy, or the wealth, but because she had rebuilt herself into a woman so powerful, so whole, that he knew nothing he could ever offer would match what she had created. As her door opened, she looked back at him one last time. "Goodbye, Jonathan," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." And then she was gone. The door closed gently. The car pulled away. The night swallowed the taillights. Jonathan stood alone beside the jet, the same jet that had lifted him into the sky but had delivered him back to Earth in a completely different way. For the first time in his life, he understood that losing the right person wasn't a single moment. It was a lifetime of realizing who they became without you.